Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights On Demand. It was a bit of a dream come true to welcome Jay Bentley to the show. He's the bassist and founding member of Bad Religion. This first aired on Tuesday, April 2nd. Enjoy. Well, in 1980 at El Camino High School in the San Fernando Valley, a few friends got together and formed what would become, in my opinion, and I know I'm not alone, one of the most important rock bands of the last 50 years. I'm beyond excited to say we've got one of those friends from that high school in LA hanging with us tonight. Jay Bentley, bassist, founding member of Bad Religion. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
That is some serious heavy accolade right there.
Well, listen, man, like what goes through your head? I mean, I know you're talking about the accolade of, being one of the most important rock bands of the last 50 years, and we can get to that. But what goes through your head when you hear that 1980 and you're reminded of, this band starting 44 years ago?
It's like yesterday was a birthday for the album Generator, and we have 17 studio albums, and every year there's just anniversary, birthday, something, and it all kind of seems just like a blur, like it was yesterday. It really does. Like I can really remember, going and having to rent a bass amp. It was terrible to go play in the drummer Jay Ziskrot's living room. The 5 songs that they had written when I got there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the smell of his carpet. So it doesn't seem to me like we've done all the things that we've done until I really sit down and start thinking about the things that we've done and how long it's really been.
Do you enjoy doing that? Like taking a step back and reflecting?
Yeah, I do. I don't do it very often, but I don't know whether it's just to keep my memory fresh or, just to kind of have those ideas, but I'll go back and relive the Suffer tour or the first time we went to Europe or, even the first show we played with Social Distortion. That was our first ever live show. So I can really remember that. I remember the feeling. I remember throwing up because I was so nervous. Wow. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Well, so let's talk about that, man. So coming up, the new tour with Social Distortion kicking off here in just a few days in Las Vegas, and it is a special tour for a lot of reasons. But as you just said, Bad Religion's first ever live show was opening for Social D, and so when you say you remember it, I mean, you can think back and remember kind of all the moments. And
yeah, we were a 4-piece and it was a warehouse and there was no stage. Everything was just on the ground. And there may have been 50 to 100 people there. To my mind, it was 1,000.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I think we had 7 or 8 songs and we played them. And I remember the people said, we're like, that's all we have. And everyone said, do it again. And so we just played the 7 songs again, and it was great, and we liked it, and everybody liked it, and it was like that was cool. That was fun.
So you were so nervous ahead of that, you threw up. I mean,
I did.
Were you just nervous just because? Were you kind of unsure of like, is this something that's going to happen? Or
I never played in front of people before. I was like, okay, this is like now we went from practicing in each other's living rooms and eventually ended up in Greg's garage. But we never really played in front of people. So this was my first experience of live performance. And I was excited. And then we were outside in the alley and I just threw up on my shoes and I was like, maybe I'm too nervous. I talked to Steve Soto about that some months later. I told him about that and he said, yeah, you just didn't drink enough beer.
There you go, man. Yeah. So you remember that feeling before, then what was that feeling of playing the set twice because the crowd wanted you to play it twice?
That when people say there's this addiction to performance, like when you just go, that was insane and people liked it and I want to do it again. And to get to do it again right away was kind of like that solved that problem of like, I want to do this again. I wonder when we get to do this again. Oh, right now? We get to do it again right now. And so the second time through, I remember the second time through was much better. Like I know I played better. I was like, I wasn't as nervous anymore. I was like, oh, it gets better every time.
That's awesome, man. So you got addicted immediately because
Immediately, yeah. Yeah. It was something, it was something in my mind that I'd always wanted to do, was to play in a band. I don't know why, but I always kind of wanted to be in a band. So being in a band was sort of like, oh, I guess this is what it is. So cool. This is great.
That's amazing, man. So opening for Social D, your first show, and then here we are in 2024. You guys are hitting the road with them. And is this, I know your paths have crossed over the years, but is it true that this is the first like official tour in the States that you guys have done together?
Yeah, 100%.
Why did that take so long? It seems like this would have been, happened many times.
Well, I mean, by 1983, everything that we knew in Southern California had sort of devolved. It just exploded into different stuff. Social Distortion, Mike went away for a while. And, everybody sort of had their own path. We broke up as a band after Into the Unknown for a bit. And I think by 88, when we got back together and did Suffer, and sort of, we just had our own story to tell, and we weren't really looking for dance partners. Didn't matter what everybody else was doing, because we were just doing our own thing. And it wasn't that I shouldn't say that. There was not the camaraderie from 1980, 81 in 1988, 89. Like, we were still friends with a lot of the bands, but they had changed immensely. And it seemed like everybody had their own agenda, whatever that was. Like, we were running a label and trying to make everything work for us. And it wasn't really about going on tour with friends.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a thought. As we got further down the road and maybe more comfortable in our place, we were able to do things like, we want to go on tour with the Super Suckers. We want to take Green Day out. We wanted to take our friends so that we could go on tour and be with them. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, and listen, I mean, everybody does things differently, and bands, no one band does it the same way as another band, but clearly the way that you guys did that, and you kind of figured out your place before you started taking friends out. Here we are 44 years later, talking about Bad Religion, talking about a new tour. And so, whatever you guys did, whatever those kind of conversations were like, it seemed like it was the right decision.
I think so. I mean, maybe the thing about Social Distortion was they were, brand and image wise, they were, I don't know, bigger than us is the right word. They were just different than us. Mike had sort of taken on this whole new personality after coming out of his time away. And, he was building a new and different brand. And it really wasn't until White Light, White Heat, White Trash that we were just like, this is something special.
Yeah.
But you sort of looked at it from the outside, not as if like he was one of us or we were all together. He was doing something really special. And so it was almost like that's not in our wheelhouse. It's not for us to mess with.
So it's pretty exciting then, man, to be here and to kind of think about all that Bad Religion has done and been through, and all that Social Distortion has done and been through. And now you guys are, finally hitting the road together, because it makes sense and it works.
No, honestly, we've been talking about it. I know, their ex-manager and people that have worked with them for years really literally have been talking about this for 15, 16 years. And it wasn't, it was always just a matter of timing is bad. They're recording, we're on tour cycle, whatever it was. And it wasn't really until we got down to Australia last year, at the beginning of last year, we went to Australia together. And we really didn't know how it was going to go. And we really had a great time. Like, we just sat and talked and had a lot of laughs about stuff. And it seemed like the shows went well together. We played well together, and people appreciated the two different bands. So that was the spark of us talking about, we should do more of this. Let's take this to the States and see how that goes.
I love that, man. And it's cool too to think like there's still sort of firsts for Bad Religion. Right.
Yeah, right. I hear you. Yeah. But I like that. And it is things that I think about. I always, kind of think about what's something that we can do that we haven't done yet. And it's when I'm on the phone with people, I'm throwing out ideas like, what if we could go on tour with the Pixies or Mastodon, right? I'm just always throwing out bands that like are outside of our bubble, because I that's what I would want to see. I always think like, what is it that gets the curmudgeon off his couch to go out and see a show? It's like something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. Well, you had mentioned, as you kind of take a step back and when you reflect, you start realizing just all that Bad Religion has done over the last 4+ decades. Besides maybe thinking of those cool out of the box touring partners, are there other things that you think that Bad Religion still hasn't done yet that you want them to do?
The answer to that is yes, but I think the truth is that we can't. And I know that's a weird thing to say. It's not that it's not something that we want to do but can't. It's something that we would like to have but can't, because it's just not for us. It's going places and sort of investing time in new territories is tough when you're 43 years old as a band, because it's like you're going to go spend 6 weeks on tour developing this place that you've never been. It's like, I don't want to do that. I've spent a lot of time doing that. And so that's why it is sort of like that. You think that there are things that you can do, but the reality is as a group, you probably won't. And so I don't really think that much about it, because it's sort of like I enjoy playing shows at the Troubadour, but I don't want to do the Troubadour every single night for the next 16 months.
Yeah, I get that, man. But that's, that kind of, whatever you want to call that, like self-awareness or just, even confidence in yourselves as a band, also probably contributes to that longevity of Bad Religion, that you're able to kind of say like, yeah, maybe we do want that, but it just doesn't make sense. And so we're not going to push ourselves in that way. Or
it was learning how to say no to people, and learning what your value is, which is, it's one of the things that I always tell young bands that I meet is mind your business. Mind your business. And that doesn't mean stay out of people's business. That means mind your money, mind your business, because if you're not, someone else will, and they're not going to care about you. And so you need to make sure that you understand the value of your band. And, we spent a lot of years playing for not enough money. And this was like the late 80s after Suffer. I'll tell you a story. We were playing a show at the country club in Reseda with the Adolescents. And after the show, Steve Soto and I were sitting backstage, and Steve says, "What'd you get paid for tonight?" And I said, $500. And Steve said, "We got $500. I said, "There was 1,000 people in here that paid $10. That's $10,000. And the promoter, at that moment, it was really funny. The promoter walked in and said, "Hey, thanks, guys," and was carrying a briefcase. And I said, "There's all the money." And that was a defining moment for me. I said, I'm not doing that anymore.
Wow.
That was the sort of the beginning of, we're going to go play a show at a club that holds 1,000 people. It's $10 a ticket. That's $10,000. Okay, we want $5,000. And people just went, "You can't ask that." I go, I am. I absolutely am asking for that.
Yeah.
It just seemed fair.
And that's amazing, man. I mean, obviously you would be met with, you can't ask for that type of pushback, but.
Sure. And then we just don't play. Okay, then, we'll go somewhere else.
Yeah,
that was maybe that was sort of that learning curve of everything that happened from Into the Unknown and the next few years of like, yeah, we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to do any of this. Like we don't want to get pushed around or have someone say like, I'll pay you this much money and you drive all the way out there, and they go, "Yeah, I'm only going to give you half of that." Nah.
Yeah, man. I mean,
not doing that.
And what vocation would you allow that to happen in?
I mean, for a lot of bands, when you're young and you don't have an agent, you don't have a manager, right. You don't really have anything. You're on your own label. What kind of pull do you have? Zero.
Well, and like what we were talking about earlier too, like also you're addicted to it, right? And you want to play, you want to do this. Right. And so, that gets taken advantage of by the wrong people. And
I mean, they know they can. I have lots of stories about, going on when you're on tour and you're just in a van and you're just doing your thing and the promoter is just not really going to give you the money that you have agreed on, and you kind of get heated about it and they just put a gun in your face. You're like, well, I guess that's the end of that discussion. And you leave going, well, crap, what are we supposed to do here?
Yeah. That's a nice music industry story.
You after a while you get it. You're like, it's a gun in your face or it's hot dog water for dinner. Like, okay, whatever. Here we are.
Yeah.
Let's do it again tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah. That addiction, man. There it is.
Yeah.
So listen, we got to wrap up, man. I appreciate this time, but I want to ask, so, 17 studio albums. The last one was Age of Unreason, came out in 2019. Obviously, some stuff happened in the world, in our country, since 2019, since that album came out. And, you would hear these stories of artists and musicians, even in the darkness of the pandemic and the lockdown, feeling fruitful because they had that time or whatever that was. And then these albums kind of coming out of that. It doesn't seem, just as a fan, as an outsider in my perspective, it doesn't seem like that was necessarily the case for Bad Religion, or am I maybe misreading that?
You can't say as a band that like, oh, we suffered through this pandemic. It's like the whole world suffered through this pandemic. Yeah. We're just one part of everyone, and that's a pretty small drop in the ocean. It became apparent that the industry that was going to suffer the most was live performance, whether it's Broadway or whatever. You're not going to be allowed to have people standing around watching you do your thing. And as most people know, recorded music doesn't really make money anymore. So the only way you make a living is going on tour and selling tickets in cotton. And when you can't do that, sure, you can sit around and write music, but it goes back to like, that's your hobby and that's fun to do. Since 1988 up until 2020, we had taken one summer off from touring.
Wow.
One. We just worked every year. We just worked because that's just what we do. And so this time off, you don't want to say like it was great, because it wasn't great, but it was sort of enlightening to how fortunate all of us are. And anyone who can go out and make a dime playing in front of people is incredibly fortunate. And maybe that's the realization that you're one of the few people that gets to do something that they love every day and get paid to do it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And that, honestly, man, like I love hearing those stories too, out of the pandemic, where you confront that darkness. You're honest about the unspeakable tragedies that occurred and everything. And yet also that you see those glimpses of light, whether that's, the self-realizations of various things, or just the time you had with other people, or whatever that might be. I love hearing that, man.
Yeah. It is I think that, performers as a high percentage are social creatures that just sort of thrive on interaction, and to have that taken away. One of the things that I noticed a lot of people doing was like, they were just playing in front of, making YouTube videos or putting stuff up on Instagram, because it just felt like I have to play something and put it out there, because that's that dangerous, nervous feeling that makes me feel alive.
Yeah.
Doing something that's outside of my comfort zone, because my comfort zone is just laying in bed and sleeping all day.
Fair enough. Yeah.
As everybody's is. But I don't want to do that.
So I got to ask, is there, are you guys talking about the follow-up to Age of Unreason, or is that on the horizon?
No, I mean, as you know, Brett is our record label guy. Like, so when it comes to making recorded music, we tend to listen to Brett's concepts about what is music in 2024. And so, is it making an album? Is it recording 4 or 5 songs and putting them on streaming services? I mean, the idea of selling a physical product is almost non-existent. So making an album where you're concerned about the packaging and all that stuff, is it irrelevant anymore? I don't know. So I know that there are songs being written because they come into Jamie, like Brett will send Jamie stuff to put drums on, and we'll talk about stuff. So Greg was writing just like 3 weeks ago. He said, I sat down and wrote a few songs. So I know things are happening. But as usual with Bad Religion on Epitaph, we're not contractually obliged to do anything.
Right. Yeah.
A nice place to be where you can do what you want. And that's not a pun.
I love it. Jay Bentley, bassist, founding member of Bad Religion. Thank you so much for hanging tonight, man. I know we're just scratching the surface on all things Bad Religion, but it has been awesome to catch up and to hang. And for whatever's to come with new music, I'm so grateful for what you've done and what you've been part of for the last 40 plus years. And I cannot wait to catch you on the road with Social D. Kicking off April 6th in Las Vegas. We've got the dates at loudwire.com. You can grab them at badreligion.com too. Jay, hopefully we can hang again soon, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Chuck.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.